welcome to Revive and Rise. I'm your host, Melody Parrish, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. So for the month of June, we've been talking about building techniques of strength and resilience, ways to build these techniques, things that you should do to overcome situations. And for our last episode for this month, we're going to be talking about reflection and the power of the pause. This is something that really changed my life when I started reflecting on things and started to try to understand myself and why I do the things I do, what makes me tick, what makes me the person that I am. And by reflecting on that, I also saw that maybe I needed to make some changes, and maybe some things needed to be worked out and needed to be handled different. At the same time, I feel like always reflecting on our experiences, it can bring both happiness and joy. Remembering things where we had peace, where we had comfort, where we experienced pure joy. Those are the things that comfort us when we need that comfort. And they just bring us joy and help us to remember things. Help us to remember the good times. Even when we're going through some very difficult situations, sometimes you just need to be reminded of the goodness of life. And I feel like that has also really helped me. So the reflection of positive experiences, but also the reflection of things that I may need to change in life, or understanding myself and searching my soul has been very, very good for me. Also, not to discount the times where I reflect on negative experiences, because that's important too. I feel like negative experiences have something to teach us, and what society labels as negative emotions, fear, anxiety, down to pain and despair. All of these emotions are trying to show us something about ourselves, if we'll only let that be revealed. And I find that reflection sometimes and pausing will help reveal that. That's just ways for us to reveal those things to ourselves and make sense of everything. So I wanted to get started with different types and cycles of reflection. So there's 4 different practices, and we'll start from the simplest to the most detailed. And various times of life and various times throughout the day or throughout my time, I will use one or all of these different methods. I can't say that one is better than the other. I just find them all very helpful. And depending on if I'm in a real time crunch or if I do have extra time for reflection, that mainly chooses the one I use. So the first part of this episode will kind of be like an introduction to those methods, and then I'll give you some techniques, some tips, and I'll explain maybe how this has helped me in my life journey, especially here lately. So we'll talk about the first and simplest of the reflection methods and models. And this is called the ERA cycle: experience, reflection, action. 3 simple steps. And in this cycle, we have an experience. So for an example, something happened earlier today, or something happened earlier in the week. You think about that experience and then you reflect on it. You reflect on how it made you feel and what you could learn from this experience, what this experience has taught you. And from those reflections and those thoughts, we're able to then form an action plan. So because of this experience and what you learned, what are you going to do moving forward? That's the kind of cycle that one is. Another cycle that we can use is the Driscoll's what model. And it's asking yourself 3 simple questions. What, as in what happened, what the experience was that you're wanting to unravel. Then the so what. So what that happened? What does that mean that this experience happened? What does that mean that I felt that way? What does that mean that it made me think these things? So that kind of is the so what. And then you have the now what. And now what means, okay, now that that's happened, what are we going to do? So it's the same kind of cycle, just using different words and ideas. So you have the what, the so what, and the now what. And then you have Kolb's experimental learning cycle. This all sounds very formal. But what that is it has 4 steps. And it's very similar, but it breaks the steps down more. So it's more of a guided experience. And you have 4 questions that you want to ask yourself. You want to think about the concrete experience. You want to think about what exactly happened and all the details. You also have then the reflective observation. And for me, this would kind of be like I'm on the outside looking in. So it would be like the concrete experience would be like what happened today. Oh, I went and I walked in the park today. And the reflective observation is while I was walking in the park, what did I see happening? What did I feel happening? What occurred? The third step is to try to understand why that occurred. So I went walking in the park and I felt good. I was active. I got some sunshine and some fresh air. And then trying to understand, what does that mean? What does going in the park do for me? What does going walking and being active do for me? What does getting fresh air do for me? Well, one thing it does is it just boosts my the joy inside of me. One thing it does is get me moving and getting out and getting exercise. It changes the environment. It changes things. It gives a break in your thought pattern that you may be stuck in. And that's just some of the things that getting out in nature does for me specifically. And then the last step is action. So now that we know these things, now that you know what this experience does for you, what are you going to do? So what I need to do is to make more time to do these things, make more time to be active, and make more time to get outside, and because it's good for me. So that's the Kolb's experimental learning cycle. You experiment with something. You try something. You try a new experience. Then you observe what happened in that experience, what exactly was the experience. Then you try and understand it, and then you have an action and a final thought. What are you going to do now? Then the last reflection cycle or model is called Gibbs reflective cycle, and it's broken down even more into 6 steps. And this is primarily if I have time and I can make time, this is primarily the cycle, the reflective cycle I use. Though, when things are tough, I'll use the ERA cycle when time is tight. But when I have time, I like this last cycle that just breaks everything down. So the first step is description. So what exactly happened? What exactly occurred? And this can be an experience. This can be something that happened to you. This can be something that happened for you. This can be something that you did on your own. So a description of what happened. The second step is feelings. So how did that make you feel? What emotions did you experience during this occurrence? The third is an evaluation of the experience, of the emotions that it provoked, and how those are linked together. And then you have an analysis of all of these things. And that's when you start to think about what parts, or at least for me, I start thinking about what parts of whatever occurred caused these feelings, caused these emotions, and what did those emotions result in. So if something made me feel happy, what did I do because of that happiness? If something made me feel sad, what did I do because of that sadness? And it can be as detailed or as simple as you want it to be. It depends on how much time you have and what you're wanting to accomplish. Then after the analysis comes the conclusion. What did you learn from this? What is this experience, or what happened to you? What is it trying to teach you? What are these emotions trying to teach you about yourself? So if something hurts your feelings, why? Why does it hurt your feelings, and what are you trying to learn about yourself? What is that hurt trying to teach you? And then from that, the last step is to make an action plan. Now that I know this, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to deal with these things that are occurring? This was a positive experience, and I enjoyed it very much. How am I going to make sure that I experience more of these things. So those are just practice ideas and ways and models of reflection, different types, simple, more detailed, and you choose whichever one you want to practice. I tend to practice all of them. I tend to use the what method when I'm more annoyed. I have noticed that, and I think it's because of just the language that they use when expressing this model. What, so what, now what? I just feel like that's a little sassy. So if I'm annoyed, I'll say that in my head. And it just makes it easier for me and more comfortable for me to just pour out that annoyance or that irritation. So whatever works for you, that's what I suggest to do. One thing that's been vital in my life has been journaling. Now, they have so many different ways to journal. You have guided journaling, you have unguided journaling, you have just totally different ways of doing things. I personally like to write stream of consciousness because I want to really know what's going on in my mind, and I don't want to have to think about it. I just want to find out what kind of thoughts and where my mind goes and what's really going on in there, and see how it's all connected. I feel sometimes if you ask yourself questions, you're going to get, exactly that answer. And sometimes those are good to make you think and to guide you to think about things. And I love those questions that you ask yourself. And one thing that I do is I will write that question sometimes, and then I'll just blah all over the page and write all kinds of different things that question brought up. So that's just the way I do, and I've found that very helpful, especially when going back to read my journal entries. I get to see really what my mind was thinking, how my mind was working in certain situations. And there's definitely a pattern. There's definitely a pattern that can be seen. And then I see how this affects me, how I can move forward and change these negative thought patterns. You start to notice when they come up. Primarily, you start to notice how you can change it, how you can break that cycle of thinking and that negativity that comes. And for me, that's been essential. I've always had these negative, intrusive thoughts that have lingered in my mind for as long as I can remember. There's always been things that I've been battling inside my mind and inside myself. And, it gets to a point where you convince yourself of all these negative things, and sometimes that takes you down roads and paths that you have no business going down. You don't need to go down some paths and roads, and it causes you to react to things in situations. And learning all those things about yourself is so important. And then we understand why we get upset. Then we understand why we get happy. Then we understand why we react to things we do. And sometimes we have negative habits and negative ideas and negative thought patterns. We'll automatically, before even realizing it, subconsciously just think of things. Sometimes they're happy things, sometimes they're good things, but sometimes they're not. And through journaling and through the stream of conscious journaling that I like to do, I've been able to see those practices, see those habits full blown. And I didn't even know that I was doing those things to myself. And I didn't even know that you start believing these negative ideas and these negative thoughts. And yet I didn't know I was even having these thoughts. I was even believing them. But a lot of them are lies. A lot of these thoughts and these ideas about yourself are lies. Lies that we've picked up somewhere, either through society of some sort, through conversations, through social media, through ideas or things that were said to us or things that we've seen somewhere. Maybe you've seen something, watched many movies and think of all these happy endings or think of these drastic things that happen and have told yourself that your life isn't good enough because you don't have some of those things, or you don't do that, so you must not be that. You must not have a good marriage or a good relationship because it doesn't look like what's on TV, or it doesn't look like these picture perfect relationships that probably aren't picture perfect. Those are just the pictures that people have captured and want to display. And so when you do the journaling, I find that you're able to see these things and you're able to see these ideas. It's interesting to me to understand that I have been self-sabotaging myself for a large part of my life, and I never really understood that. I never really thought that. I never really understood what I was doing. But now, through my reflective processes and through my reflection that I've been doing, I can see where I have been standing in my own way of things. Not that I haven't had a good life, and not that I haven't enjoyed my life, not that I haven't enjoyed parts of things, but just the fact that sometimes I stand in my own way. You hear people many times that they figured out that they're their own worst enemy, that they're what's preventing themselves. And, you know, that gets to be so cliche sometimes, where that's just the answer and we don't really think about that. And when we do think about it, we just don't do anything about it. So we think about it and we see it, but we don't do anything about it. Sometimes when you're journaling, you can come up with a plan or an idea of what to do when you find that out. Sometimes when you're reflecting, you can pause to think about, you know, I think that time is so important, and we are in such a time that we're constantly running and constantly going and constantly trying to avoid difficult situations and difficult struggles that we may have. We don't try and fix it, we just try and avoid it. So we have to busy ourselves with something. We have to constantly be going to prove something to ourselves or something to others. We're always trying to prove something somewhere. I know this because I got caught up in it. I got caught up in it a lot. But when we pause and we stop to think for a moment and try and work through these things, then we're able to make decisions and make plans and make ways to take care of ourselves and to help others and to just be a light and a bright light in the world. And I think at this time that's so important. So some ways of journaling that I've found, of course, my favorite is the stream of consciousness, just writing it all down, not even thinking about it, just writing what it is, not worrying about punctuation, not worrying about your word usage, just writing it all down. Then you can go back and read it and make the corrections if you want to, or just understand what your mind is thinking. And I started that practice. How I was able to do that was just get a page, and I would just write. I would just start writing, even if I couldn't think of anything. So in those first journal entries that I started doing this, there's a lot of blank, nothing, quiet, blank, because I didn't have anything going on in my brain at that moment that I could capture. But then once you do that, then it all comes. And then I would start writing for 5 minutes. And I would just write for 5 minutes, and then I'd be done. And then I'd stop, and then I'd read it. And then I'd try and understand what I wrote. That 5 minutes turned into 10 minutes, it ended up turning into 30 minutes, then an hour. And I would just get out so much. And I learned so much about myself by doing that. And I would get out the frustration, I would get out the joy, and I would be able to understand things. And it just helped me tremendously to do that. But sometimes you may need prompting questions. You may need prompting questions like, what went well today? And then just write down things that went well for you today, that are things that you accomplished, goals that you accomplished, steps that you took to accomplish a bigger goal. What did I receive from others today? How am I living my life? Am I doing the things that I want to do? Questions like that. What is one thing that you would change about your day if you had the day to do over again? And, all these kinds of things. And you can find prompts for journaling everywhere. All you have to do is Google, and you will find all kinds of things. What I like to do most is, for me, I'm a quote person. I love quotes. And so you can find quotes everywhere. Sometimes it's something that someone says in the moment during the day. Sometimes it's something that you read somewhere in a book, in an article, in a blog. Sometimes the quote can be like a famous, well-known quote. Sometimes it can be song lyrics. I just take whatever hits me and commands my attention at that moment, and I'll just write it down, and then I'll write my thoughts about it. I find this very helpful as well. Another way of journaling is known as the 3-column method. So you take a page and you divide it into columns, and you'll have goals, reality, and action. If we do this type of journaling, then I feel like we have to really be honest with ourselves. If you have a goal, you also need to know the reality. And this isn't discouraging yourself. This is just knowing the reality of this goal. If you look at the goal, you look at the reality, then you can make an action plan. And that action plan, depending on the goal and the reality, you might be able to complete this goal in a day. You might be able to complete this goal in a week, or this goal may take years. But from that goal and reality that you've just written down, you can make an action plan for the steps that need to be taken. And this is a good way for us to journal as well. If we have something that we want to do, something that we want to accomplish. Another thing that I like to do when I reflect is a real-time check-in. And that's what noticing yourself in the moment, if you can. Sometimes these things are fleeting moments and you don't have enough time. But most of the time you can do this reflection some way. So you notice your physical response. Does your stomach tighten up? Does your eyes well up with tears? Does your heart skip a beat? Does something bring you so much joy that you just can barely contain yourself? Just notice your physical response. Do you get anxious? Do your shoulders and neck tighten up? All of these things, they're important for us to notice. Again, we'll start to learn and understand what brings us anxiety, what brings us happiness. Another thing that is really, I think, beneficial in these situations is just come up with one word that describes the mood that this puts you in. One word. And this, I think, is a wonderful practice. I heard about this practice, and there was this incident where someone, an art curator, actually said that they always looked at the art and then came up with one word, that the first word that hit them, that went through their minds when they first looked at it. And that was usually what that expressed, and what emotions that art projected on others. And this helped them to also discover fake pieces of art. They could really notice fake pieces of art versus true pieces of art, replications, of the actual original art piece, and it was all in this technique. So I think when we're in social situations or things where, that we're experiencing, that one word can be very important. But we must listen to it. We must listen to that word. Sometimes we can pick that word apart at the moment. Sometimes we can't. And we'll need to go back. Why did this make me feel this word? I know I usually, when I do this practice, a lot of times yes or no will come up. And that's when I react. If yes comes up first, then I'll react to whatever situation it is in that way. And if no comes up, I'll immediately shut that down, whatever that experience is, whatever that question is, immediately. It's a way of learning to trust your gut, because our bodies know things before it gets to our mind. Your body holds on to different experiences, and those experiences make our bodies naturally react when they occur. If it becomes a repeating cycle, you'll notice that your body reacts immediately, and then your mind catches up. So it's important for us to listen to our gut and listen to our bodies. Do a body scan. Think of a word when things present themselves. Another thing, I just like to sit quietly in a quiet space. I usually like to be in nature and listening to the birds or the water moving, the waves crashing, something of that sort, and just observe your thought. Just observe where your mind goes, what you're thinking in that quietness. And that quietness can be a short time or a long time, just whatever time you have. It's so important. On a day where the breeze is going, stopping and just observing your thoughts as the breeze comes across your face, just observing the sounds as the leaves rustle. These things are just so important, and it's a way for us to learn about ourselves, I feel like, and think a little more clearly than just the rush. Another thing is future visioning, and I think that we need to understand that just because they're small steps towards a goal does not mean that we're not going to accomplish that goal. We don't have to jump in leaps and bounds, and we have this mentality sometimes that if things are easy and things are quick, that's what's meant to be, and then if things get a little hard, then we just automatically drop that idea. And this can be this way of thinking at times can be so detrimental to us, because by doing that, having this way of thinking, that everything that's positive in our life and everything that's supposed to be in our life works out very quickly, it can cause us to shut down pathways, to close doors that may have been just a little bit open, and we needed to gradually push that door and inch it open. if you walk a mile, it doesn't matter if you race and run to that mile, or if you casually walk that mile. At the end of that mile, you're still going to do the same thing. One's just going to be faster and one is going to be a little bit slower, but you're still going to accomplish the goal. And that's what we need to remember. And I know I am very much at fault for wanting things to go fast, just expecting so much in such a short time. I've had to really learn, and I've been working really hard with my therapist to learn that sometimes things don't move as quickly as we want them to, but we just need to keep moving forward. Those small steps, they add up. My therapist likes to use the idea of a ladder and the idea of the rungs on the ladder. And if we space those if those rungs are spaced out too far, then we can't climb the ladder because we can't reach the next rung. However, if the rungs of the ladder are spaced shortly, we can easily go up the ladder because we don't have to step as far. It's not as difficult. So depending on how you look at things, depending on your perspective, you can race up the ladder, race to the end of the finish line because the steps are small. They're small and easier to reach. Or you can make goals for yourself that are far apart and difficult to reach so that you may never finish. You may never get to that finish line. It's up to us. And I've learned that in my life, this is a part where I've really sabotaged myself. I've set goals that I can't reach, unreachable goals for myself. And therefore, when I can't reach the goal, it just causes me to think that I'm incapable of it. And that's been a real struggle in my life because then I'll either decide that I need to work harder and get caught up in that, or I'll decide that I can't. One or the other. So I feel like sometimes we need the quiet, sometimes we need the outside. We definitely need the power of the pause. We definitely need to slow things down sometimes when we have a question about ourselves, or we have a question that we want to answer, or something that we want to learn about ourselves, and we need to start questioning things. We need to get curious about ourselves, and we need to start really thinking about ourselves and thinking about our actions. We need to start thinking about our emotions. One thing that the last thing that I'll say is that a lot of times things can be as simple as changing your environment. And what I mean by that is that, yes, you can go on a trip. Yes, you can go, you can physically go somewhere. You can go to the other end of town, or you can go to a town close by and take a day trip. You can do those kind of things, going to a park or going here, going there, and that's great. I do that a lot. I will physically change my environment because I need to. I need to break that thought pattern. I need to see different things, experience different things. I need to analyze those different things that I'm experiencing. But, and when I say that, I mean going out into nature, when I'm surrounded by mountains, I usually think about the way mountains are formed, two things that collide at once and produce a mountain. And then that leads me to thinking of the mountains in my life and how two things have collided in my life to form different things. So choosing things to spark these thoughts and these ideas, I think, are very important. If you don't have time to do that, if you're a busy mom or a busy person that's busy in their career, or you're taking care of your parents or friends or something like that, or whatever it may be that keeps you busy. Just change your environment for a moment. Just go outside, just for a moment. Just go to a different room in your house for a moment. Just change that environment somehow. Go have coffee with a friend. Go make a phone call. There's so many different things. Listen to some music for a few songs. There's so many different ways to change your environment. Take a hot shower. And when I say your environment, I mean get all of your senses involved. Your smells, your tastes, your sensations, feelings, your hearing, your sight. Get it all involved. Stop for a moment and just eat something that you don't normally eat. All of these things, and just see what experiences come up, see what thoughts and ideas. But just take a moment, just pause and take some time to yourself, whatever that is, however you can do it. So I want to thank you for joining us today, and I hope I've said something that will somehow inspire you to have a different technique, a different practice, to form healthy habits, something. And I want you to remember that you do not have to suffer alone.